Noob School. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Noob School. John Sterling here, and today I've got my good friend, longtime friend, Dirk Pieper. Thank you for being here, Dirk.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. Among other things, Dirk is the CEO of Sage, which is one of the largest suppliers of interiors to the automotive space. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's not bad.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So Dirk has a fascinating story. I mean, I'm telling you, it's fascinating. I've gotten to watch it myself. It has a lot to do with what happened in 2008 and 2009, but also about all the preparation in his kind of skill development and experience that made him ready for it. So anyway, we're going to get to that. But let's start at the beginning, Dirk. Grew up in Baltimore?
That's right.
Baltimore, okay. Mm-hmm. And you went to St. Paul's?
I did.
Prep school?
I did.
What was it like going to prep school?
Well, it was kind of a unique situation for us. I was the youngest of six.
Uh-huh.
And my mother happened to be the librarian.
Uh-huh.
And that was really what our choice was to attend St. Paul's.
Okay.
Because she was the librarian there. So all six of us went to school there.
Wow.
And it was only really 3 miles from my house, so it was very convenient.
Okay.
Very. It's changed a lot. When I was there, it was more. It was a small school that was located in an old mansion that had been redone and built into classrooms, and now it's probably bigger than where I went to university. So.
All right. And did you live off campus or?
Yeah.
On campus?
I just I was a day student.
Day student. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All right. That's
sure.
good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've always heard that's a great school, and then you decided to go to Washington and Lee.
I did.
There.
I did.
What was your small group of colleges you were considering?
Well, at that time I was playing lacrosse at St. Paul's, so I was interested in a lacrosse school.
Yeah.
So probably on the high end of the reach was Cornell University. Mm-hmm. Visited there, but it was way too cold.
Yeah.
And the W&L was in the mix. UVA was in the mix, and then a small school in Ohio that not many people probably know of, Denison.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Denison College back then. They had a pretty good program, and but anyway, I decided to go to Lexington, to Washington and Lee, and it was a great school. Worked out really, really well.
Yeah.
Great community at W&L.
Yeah.
Good experience.
Yeah.
And beautiful country there.
It is a beautiful, beautiful place. All the people I know that went there, kind of good, well-rounded people, good character. So, yeah, I think it's a great school.
Yeah,
right,
they got a strong alumni, for sure.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. I guess my cousin's husband is named Charlie Tom.
Okay.
You know Charlie? He might have been a little bit older than you, but
Yeah.
he's been on the alumni relation things there. But he's done real well in Florida.
There's a pretty big community here in Greenville.
Yeah.
WNL grads, and particularly South Carolina, for sure.
If somebody was listening to this, and one of our youngsters here, what would you tell them going to WNL's like?
I think that first, from an academic perspective, it's a fairly rigorous program.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, I think, what I appreciated was it was very well-rounded.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the advantages that I had of going to WNL, coming out and starting to work with a big company like Milliken, I was very well prepared in terms of how to write letters, believe it or not, which we had to do prior to email.
Yeah.
And ensure, that the grammar was correct.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how that school was very well-rounded in terms of, preparing you for that side and demanding that you have that. But also, I was a chemistry major and had a very, very strong chemistry department. So, but it was balanced. I'd say that the experience was balanced, and that's why it gives you a good overall education, not to where you're just, targeted chemistry, and,
Right.
you take, I mean, it's truly a liberal arts school where you get a good opportunity.
Where did the chemistry come from? Why did you want to do that?
Well, my grandfather was a chemist for a company back in the day it was called Armstrong Cork back in the day. He was around when they created linoleum, if you will.
Yeah.
And I was just always fascinated by it, and the background that he had there, and I think it also allows you to think analytically sometimes, having that kind of discipline. That and math, I think, are similar in giving you that kind of discipline to where you can look at things analytically and make some good decisions.
Yeah. Interesting. It seems like when I look at the tech leaders today, not all of them, but most of them are people who certainly have the engineering background, which so many of them do, but they have that, but they also have, the well-rounded background where they can talk to the press and think about sales and marketing and what consumers want and, that kind of softer stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
But also have this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, as one of the items I'd point out is as I went through my career at Milliken, it was very interesting because, to your point, there are many times that you'd have a very qualified individual, but you could change their position in the company, and it could be close to a disaster. And I always liked the comments that we'd have, because we go through these year-end reviews, and Tom Malone, who was then the COO, would always make a point of, let's be careful about saying that person's not capable or not a good person. We may very well have them in the wrong type of position. And there were so many times in the company where we would, you put somebody in a position that they weren't, even though on paper it said they were outfitted to management, they really weren't because of their skills. And, you could put them back in another position and they'd flourish. But you'd see people, in a group of 10 be one of 10, and they get moved to another group. They could be 8 next year. Very interesting, but always taking a look at making sure you got people in a position that they're best suited for.
And so you're getting out of Washington Lee, with a chemistry degree, great school, great degree, and you picked Milliken. What other companies were you looking at?
I actually was seriously considering going to graduate school, primarily at Emory University. But, it was kind of an interesting story. I was playing lacrosse, and of course my father came down and broke the news to me that lacrosse didn't pay a whole lot of money, and that I needed to start to look around. And of course I was seriously considering graduate school, but Milliken came on campus and interviewed, and it really kind of changed my direction in terms of what I wanted to do. So I switched from graduate school because I actually came down here a couple times and visited and was fascinated by the manufacturing and the company. And, also I felt like, having grown up in Baltimore, I wanted to experience something. I always tell my kids and their peer group, I went pioneering, and packed up my car from Baltimore and came down to South Carolina to Greenville, where I'd never been before, and walked up the steps at the Gailey Mill back in August 27th, 1979, and it was quite an experience, So really, I'd thought about graduate school primarily, but then when I interviewed with Milliken on campus, I absolutely fell in love with it. So I didn't look at a whole lot of different places.
Got it. Yeah. Well, you didn't need to. It's a great company. I mean, I don't know many companies that are more like long-term approach focused.
Yeah, for sure.
Long-term, let's do what's best for the long term of the company.
Yeah. Well, I think, the vision that Roger Milliken had, and certainly has instilled in the board as it stands today, was definitely the diversification of the company that he did. Very, very clever move to move into, where it was primarily, when I started, it was significantly textiles.
Yeah.
But he had started and had the vision to branch out into the chemical business, into nucleic agents, and also into carpet, and that really gave a good balanced portfolio.
Yeah.
And textiles really took quite a dip, but now it's actually back. It's probably one of the strongest
It's unreal.
Yeah, with the repatriating and, the consistency that's going on, it's strong.
So, how much time did you spend with Mr. Milliken?
I would say as I probably after about 7 or 8 years, I always had the opportunity in the quarterly meetings to present to Mr. Milliken, and had a lot of opportunity. Probably my closest opportunities were when I spent 4 years over in Europe, and there was always a situation where Mr. Milliken, he would come in on a Sunday, and so I had the responsibility to pick him up at the airport and kind of spend the week with him. So I came pretty close to him at that point, and then I would say down the stretch of the acquisition of the Automotive Group, certainly got to know him fairly well during that period as well.
Yeah,
so,
interesting.
Yeah. But just a super gentleman, and what a businessman.
Yeah.
Yeah, just terrific.
How did that whole thing start? I mean, did he start it, or was it like
No, he was third generation.
third generation?
Yeah. His grandfather Garish had started it. It was believe it or not, a trading store in Minot, Maine. And in the guest house, the Milliken Guest House, they actually have the original books, the trading books of 4 bags of potatoes and how much it costs, and then they got into the woolen business in New England, and then ultimately, Roger Milliken is the one that actually moved him down here to Spartanburg
For the labor and the weather and all that stuff.
100%, primarily for labor and non-union.
Yeah.
He was very strong about that, and so
It's just amazing, though. They started as a trading shop in New England and then become something
Incredible.
completely different.
yeah,
Think about Michelin, same way. Two guys in a bicycle shop
yeah,
in France.
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
it's visionary.
Well, I think the message I always get from that is that you kind of need to be in the game to make something happen.
Yeah.
Just talking about it's not enough, but if you're kind of in the game and you've got something started, even if it's not the exact right thing, if you stay at it long enough, who knows?
Yeah.
Be
Well,
something.
you figure it out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's always an opportunity is to diversify. I mean, it's basically, what we had to do at Sage was a lot of, what Roger Milliken had taught us, right? So we were primarily a textile manufacturer of automotive seating.
Right.
And 95% of what we did was here in North America. Now it's about 42%. So he had taught us to have the vision to grow globally, but then also product diversity. So we're now manufacturing, synthetic suedes and synthetic leather and headliners and the whole interior. So, because if we'd have just stayed with a narrow focus and just textiles, we would have really be in a spiral.
Right.
Just diminished revenue, and that's cutting your way to profitability is not my motto.
Right. Right.
I'm a big believer in growing.
I love it. Plus, in your business, I don't think you can you have so much capital costs. Like in a software business, you just cut people. It's like, well,
Right.
expenses are gone now. But in your business, you already have all these fixed expenses.
That's right.
Can't cut it the same way you can't cut it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've never, that's, as you know, and you study a lot of these different business cases. I mean, I always told our people every year, if we're not growing, we're dying. Because I've never seen a business be successful that just tried to cut their way to profitability the whole time. It just doesn't work.
Not for long.
No.
For long.
Well, you can get short-term results.
Yeah. So you started there in 79. Give us just the highlights of your different jobs and responsibilities you had up until, let's say, 2008.
Yeah. So I spent the first 15 years in manufacturing, right? And, eventually, of course, was a plant manager, was probably the first major role I had where, I'd be presenting to Mr. Milliken, and then I moved on to director of manufacturing, and ran all the automotive manufacturing, and then I got my first opportunity in business, and I became in early 1990 the Ford global business manager.
Okay.
So managing all the Ford business, and that was a pretty incredible learning experience for a guy that had spent 15 years in manufacturing.
Yeah.
One of the points that I'd make today is, that was a real learning experience, and I had a few hard knocks in that job because, I didn't quite understand what I understand today, right? And of course, when you're young, that coming out of manufacturing, you have all the answers.
Right. Give us an example.
Well, I'll give you an example. It's not one that I'm real proud of, but
We won't tell anyone.
it's one that that I certainly learned, and it really has been very helpful for me. But so I'll give you an example. So, of course, with automotive companies, there's always an annual, price reduction or cost give back, right? APRs is what we call it.
Okay.
Well, I had a very aggressive purchasing director at Ford, who was insisting on a certain amount of recovery. Well, we had developed a plan by switching some products, et cetera, that we were going to save them a significant amount of money without damaging our profitability, because that was important to maintain that. What I failed to do was I failed to listen and really understand what his performance measurements were and how his performance measurements were calculated. So as it turned out, he was rated on what they called non-engineering type cost reductions. And of course, we'd given him a significant amount of engineering cost reductions.
Right.
And we didn't meet his target. And we actually got put out of Ford for 2 years on moratorium of no new business. Wow. So that was a real eye-opener. You talk about a sick feeling flying back on the plane from Detroit to Greenville.
Wow.
But, what I'd say was important about that is, I probably was upset with myself for a period of time, but I chose to learn from that experience and really try to understand what I had done wrong. And I can tell you that mistake, which at the time seemed almost fatal to me, and fatal for my career, I thought, it turned out to be the greatest learning experience, because now, over time, having developed relationships with people across so many different OEMs, I concentrate first on understanding, what their performance measurements are.
Right, right.
And you really want to make those people successful.
Yes.
And it's not just your calculation.
Yes.
You got to make sure you understand it in their terms.
Right.
So, it was a...
That's a great lesson, Dirk. That's such a great lesson. It's such a great way you handled it.
Well, at the time, I was a little bit concerned.
Did you have a couple of drinks on the way home?
I don't know. I think I was stunned.
Well, yeah. I mean, to just to reiterate for the school, Dirk's lesson learned was just because the contract looked good from his perspective and the guy signed it, it still didn't make it a good overall deal. Because when Dirk won, this guy really lost, and he had other things he could do to Dirk that weren't even on that piece of paper.
That's right.
And you have to remember that, particularly with these big companies. And the other thing that's weird about it is it sounds like you could have arranged it where you could have given him those things.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And since that learning experience, been able to orchestrate many deals with different OEMs and enjoyed a lot of success.
Right.
Which has allowed us to become the largest, right?
Yeah.
So we always wanted to be the number one preferred, not necessarily number one.
Yeah.
Because what that meant was when anybody thought about automotive interiors, they thought about Sage. And just so happens that philosophy and always treating our customer right and never breaking a promise, allowed us to grow the business to where we became the largest.
Unreal. Number one in the world.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's unreal. So one other question I've got is if you're dealing with, let's say, an Asian country, and they won't tell you that information. Like I've found in dealing with them, it's just they're less likely to come out and just say, "This is what I want."
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Well, there's no question that
Am I right?
you are
Okay.
absolutely correct. And in fact, because Sage is an American company, and even before that, when we were with Milliken, trying to get business with the Japanese OEMs was very difficult. Fortunately, we've been successful. But to your point, it would even be expressed in a terminology, because at first we used to have trading companies with us all the time. And the purchasing people would even really look at you and say, well, tell me why you're here, because we really don't need you to be here, because I've got my trading company that I'd really rather deal with.
Yeah.
So the way that we worked through that situation is across all the different functional areas in a big OEM like a Toyota, we would build relationships, right? So where the purchasing folks might hold it close to their chest, you'd start to glean different amounts of information out of, let's say, engineering or product planning or the different areas that you dealt with, and they'd start to give you some information about what was going on. But, one of the things I'd say, John, is that I've learned throughout my career is building relationships and trust with people goes a long way. And, just consistently being in a position to where you develop a relationship. So,
Yeah.
I've been to Japan 72 times to develop, to spend time, having
Yeah.
dinner,
Yeah.
karaoke, and just continual persistence, if you will,
Yeah.
relentless pursuit of, look, we want to be a supplier. And I'd say that it's probably taken 15 years minimum, but we're finally, there. But when they hold the information close to the vest, I think you got to go lateral to different functional areas and try to find out information.
Gotcha. Go around.
Correct.
That's unbelievable. 72 times so far, and you got 2 more trips coming up.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Coming up next year. That's awesome.
Been working on my Japanese karaoke.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
What's your go-to song over there?
It's called Kitasaba.
Kitasaba.
Yeah.
Okay. So they don't play like AC/DC or something?
Oh yeah, we do
Okay,
that too.
okay.
They love that.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. They
You
like
know,
to stay up late and
well-
drink cold white wine and
Well, sake is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they really like Suntory whiskey.
Centauri whiskey.
Yeah, they make their own whiskey. It's pretty good whiskey. Over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
But they have the coldest beer in the world in Japan. No doubt.
we tried Japan, the Japanese market, and this is how pitiful we were. We went 3 times and gave up.
Yeah.
I mean, first time they would just look at you,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then the second time they said hello or something, and
Yeah.
I mean, it was
Well,
we gave up.
one of the items that I would also recommend, and we had our team do it, is it's always a good idea to read up on the culture, right? Because the perception that we would have as Westerners, it's part of their culture, but we don't understand it. Which is, they have this expression, the amai, which means basically they don't say a whole lot. It's just kind of they have a feeling about the way that the meetings are going, and it's not all black and white for them, and they don't prefer it. In fact, before you even go to a meeting, the meeting's really already been decided through all the nemawashi, et cetera. But so I read this book called The Japanese Mind and several other books that really helped in understanding.
Yeah.
So when I was in a meeting, I wouldn't, you wouldn't say anything. Somebody would make a point and you just wait to say something, which all of a sudden made them realize that you started to understand their culture. Because our impulse is, we got to be saying something in the meeting or we're not doing anything.
Right.
But many times they will remain silent for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And they're really kind of testing you. to
Well,
see.
that happened to us. We had the
exactly.
guy show up, It was like the senior guy and the junior guy.
Yep.
We're sitting like way across the table.
Oh, yeah.
And the senior guy is like leaning like this, and his eyes are like shut, and
Yeah.
we're like, we give up. We're done. We gave up like just 2
Yeah.
seconds into it, but that's what he was doing.
Yeah,
He wasn't feeling so good about it.
Yeah. Yeah, they the tendency is definitely to kind of absorb the situation, and so I'll tell you, I really recommend for people. We're a great country, America, but be an expat somewhere and go out to a restaurant when Americans show up. Okay.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you get a pretty good idea of how we're perceived in other cultures.
Yeah.
An example is we're in the country where we're living, and I hear the American coming in, what's wrong? Y'all didn't figure out how to invent ice, and things like that, and comments like that.
Yeah.
It's not their culture, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you cringe, but you get that experience, and then it teaches you when you're around other cultures to be aware,
Right.
How we're perceived, because many times it's true the way we are,
Yeah, I mean, it is excellent. In my book, it's one of the things I recommend if the people have the time and the means is to go around the world before
Yes.
they start college.
Yes.
Work, travel, do whatever, stay in friends' houses, whatever you got to do, just do the lap,
Yeah.
and you'll see that maybe ice is a good way to do it here, but other places they don't do it that way.
That's right.
It's
That's
okay.
right.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to understand it in the guidelines. One of my favorite stories is my friend in Japan, who I hired years ago, and we've, been throughout it. I became very conscious of many of the customs, but so I had a big old apple, and we were on the train, and I looked over him. I said, Taka, I said, it's probably not really a good idea to eat this apple on the train, isn't it? And he said, oh, it's okay, Dirk. They think you're a heathen anyway. So go ahead.
Yeah.
You just got to know where your spot is
Yeah.
and where your position is. That's
Well, then you and I agree on that. And again, to all the people, the Noob School people, travel when you have a chance and get around the world, and it will help it helped me sell better in America when I got back.
Yeah, 100%.
So easy,
Yeah.
comparatively. I
Yeah.
thought just so much, because people will just tell you. You ask them a question, they tell you the answer,
Yeah.
So we agree on that. So let's go ahead and get to 2008, 2009. So you're running Sage,
Actually, I was with Milliken.
but you were running Sage as a division of Milliken, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't Sage.
What was it called?
It was the Milliken Automotive Division.
Okay, I always
Yeah.
thought it was called Sage. So you're running that, which essentially became Sage,
Correct.
and it was one of the big divisions of Milliken.
Sure.
And it just served automotive, and that's when everyone announced that all the car makers around the world were all going out of business.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, what we actually had was, the new leadership came in at Milliken.
Yeah.
And of course, we did a full-on Boston consulting group study. And, the old 4-box model, you're either a cash generator or you're up in the right hand of proprietary, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we were kind of right in the middle. And, I would say going into 2008, when the dark clouds were forming, it was kind of perceived that, well, you can only have so many businesses that fit in a certain category. And so keep the performance textiles group and we'll sell the automotive division. So I was tasked with selling the division. We created the SIM and distributed it primarily to a lot of our competitors. And, we had a lot of discussion, but, as time went on, we were racing against time.
Yeah.
And the storm clouds had really gotten quite heavy, and nobody was interested in it.
Yeah.
And, of course, the revenue had dropped significantly. There were some very difficult times, for sure.
Yeah.
So, then what happened with that in mind, a colleague of mine, approached me. I was running the group. He was in a strategic role in manufacturing, and he said, wouldn't this be a great business to buy? And I give him a lot of credit for certainly generating that idea, because when you're in the heat of the action, we were dealing with cash before delivery. We were dealing with whether we were going to get paid. We had 3 customers on the verge of bankruptcy who had actually went bankrupt. So with Azalea Capital here in town, Jim McCauley and the group, we made an approach to Milliken and got a letter of intent signed. Now, as part of that deal, that was in May, and as part of that deal, in order to incentivize us, the CEO and CFO of Milliken asked that we resign. So basically, I went 4 months with 4 kids at Christ Church with no salary.
Yeah.
It was a little bit hairy. Yeah. And quite frankly, as you remember, as everybody remembers, the market was really upside down.
Yeah.
And so the normal model of, getting this debt and maybe getting some mezz debt, we didn't get the money.
Right.
And we were literally, I was very engaged in trying to secure the funding. Like I had mentioned earlier, we had 21 managers basically put their retirement in. We had Azalea that put in a certain amount of equity.
So hold on, you had 21 managers, including yourself, push in their Milliken retirement into the deal. Azalea Capital, local private equity company.
Right.
And you're looking for that final gap money?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which was pretty significant.
Okay.
It was about twice the amount we already had in there that we needed to meet the Milliken price point.
Okay.
And things got pretty harrowing from that perspective. And this is, I can look back on it now and reflect. But, I was literally traveling to every customer, even though I wasn't employed by Milliken. I had to explain to them we were doing a buyout.
Oh, yeah.
Because one of the largest customers, like I said, the decision had been made to put them on cash before delivery, and they were taking all of our business and giving it to a competitor. And I can remember to the day going up and having the meeting with them. I remember the individuals extremely well, and they've become great friends. I said, give us a chance, And so they stopped taking away the business, and we proved out we do it. But a letter actually came out from Milliken that said, look, we're going to shut the business down because it doesn't look like the cash has been achieved. And
thanks.
Yeah. So, I can remember. I often tell this story that we made the presentation like we always do. There were 66 banks in the room, and I made the presentation. And as soon as I used the word textiles and automotive, it was like turning a light on in a room full of cockroaches. They were gone.
Yeah.
And we ended up at the 24th hour, getting an individual investor to invest in the company, and made the difference. I remember July 24th to this day, sitting in that parking lot, praying that we would pull this thing off. And
nice.
That individual liked the deal, and so then the fun began. Right, we got the deal closed, and we had to execute like within 90 days of getting the whole thing flipped over. We had no ERP system. They cut you off. We were handwriting checks.
Yeah.
They didn't cut us off, but we facilitated a transaction agreement, transaction services agreement. But within 1 year, we had to develop our own ERP system.
I gotcha. Okay.
Right. So we had a year.
Okay.
But I was pretty amazed with the people we had that they got all that done. And so, we started up the company and very manually focused. But that's when we created the name Sage. And the reason we picked the name Sage was because of our top management group had on average about 24 years of experience in automotive, and so we were bringing wisdom to the automotive industry.
Yeah.
But the other part of Sage is the green part, the herb, being the sustainable nature of the company. So
Okay.
we created it. So, from there, the rest is history. We've grown significantly. Like I said, 95% of our business was in North America. Now about 42% is. We're larger in Europe than we are here, and then in Asia we have a significant presence. But a lot of experience with doing M&A and expanding outside of North America. It's been we have a fantastic team of people, and it's been very successful for us.
That's fantastic. Well, it's just an unbelievable story. And again, I think, when people read like Forbes or Inc. or one of these magazines, and they read a success story like yours, they think, I want to do what he did. I want to do that. It just sounds really good. But it's the chemistry degree and the Washington Lee degree and all that time being a good up and coming executive in all those different things. So when it happened, that with your sales skills and your determination, you took advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah.
But many others wouldn't have tried it, or they couldn't have pulled it off.
Yeah.
You have to be ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you were ready, but it still was really hard.
Yeah, and you got to have a lot of faith.
Yeah.
It's going to work out.
Yeah.
I would say to your point that you're making, I would say two key factors that if I look back and say, okay, one of them was, not necessarily being afraid to make some mistakes and to learn from it. I know that's kind of a cliche, but it's true, especially the one I described for you at Ford.
Yeah.
Pretty significant mistake.
Yeah.
Thought it was a career-ending move at the time, but I learned a lot.
Yeah.
The other is just what we were talking about. Is I strongly encourage people to take themselves out of their comfort zone. Right, the move of moving the family to Europe for 4 years was not real popular. As they say, you turn out if you're crying when you go over there and you're crying when you come back, that means it's a success. So we ended up that way, but certainly. That's a challenge, but I recommend it, and for our entire family, but particularly for me from a business perspective, that made all the difference in how I looked at situations and the risks I was willing to take, and just kind of an overall grasp of what was going on.
Well,
right.
So happy for you. It's wonderful. But I want to ask you a couple of quick sales questions. In your experience, with all the different groups you've managed, what are some of the things that salespeople have done that made them great salespeople, or they've done that made them not make it?
So I would say, as it applies to our business, and I think in a lot of cases, those people that have been successful truly know the product or service that they're selling, right? If you don't do your own internal homework and really know the product that you're selling and the services that come with it and the reliability that comes with it, and really understand that and know that what you're saying is accurate, you're going to have a very difficult time. Yeah. And I think if you get in a situation where you get asked some questions that are difficult, you don't know the answer, it's always best to come back and say, I'll get that answer for you, rather than wanting to act like you're the smartest guy in the room and have all the answers.
Yeah.
People respect much more when you say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
But the more you know about your product, because I've seen where people have gotten themselves in a tight spot, maybe by overselling some things that maybe were not exactly true about the products. And I'm probably one of the most overzealous people in terms of wanting to sell our product, but you have to be careful that you don't oversell it and you really understand it.
Okay.
I think the other factor is as you call on different people, you really have to work diligently at trying to build the relationship, right? To know more about the people that you're dealing with. And again, I go back to understanding what their performance metrics are and making them understand either, through telling them straight out or by your actions that you want to get them promoted and you want to make them successful. Anytime somebody sees that, they're going to want to work with you.
Yeah.
For sure.
That is so true.
Yeah, I mean, that you can genuinely tell that.
If you believe that about someone, you're like, well, let's do some business then, because that's what I want too.
Right.
You know,
Right.
We want the same thing.
Right. But if you're selling and you can indicate that you want to make that person successful,
Yeah,
they're going to work with you.
I love it.
They're going to work with you.
love
But I also suggest you really understand your product or your service that you're selling, because BSing doesn't get you there.
No, not anymore.
No.
No. Too much information available on the web to get away with too much anyway.
Yeah, people can look up things right while you're in the meeting.
So, Dirk, let's see. 2 more questions. What's your favorite word?
My favorite word. You told me you were going to ask me this. I guess it's from my perspective. It's my favorite words or expression is, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Okay, nice.
That's my number one expression.
I love it.
If you're not growing, you're dying.
And that applies to a business, applies to people,
Yeah.
applies to everything.
You know, I always have an expression, which I've tried to work through, and I believe in it very much myself. You know, a guy named Dennis Wheatley, he wrote these books way back when I was really figuring out, but it's the theory of positive thinking, and never spend time worrying, because worry is the misuse of your imagination.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's so many people that worry. They spend so much time worrying about what's, they don't want to happen, that it does happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I strongly recommend that positive outlook and think about where you want to be. Right. That's important.
I love it. Well, I've certainly noticed that about you, our whole friendship, always a positive outlook. It's wonderful. And then lastly, what would you like to promote today to the listeners? Anything?
Well, one of the things, and you and I were talking about this, for Sage Automotive, we try to participate as actively as we can in the community.
Right.
Because there are not a lot of people here that can buy directly from us, because we're OEM directed.
Yeah.
Except my friends at BMW, they could purchase from us. Oliver, I hope you're listening.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think in the charitable organizations that we support here are Trees for Greenville.
Okay.
We're a big supporter of that, have been since day one of Sage, because it aligns with our sustainability. We because of the design aspect, we're a big supporter of the artisphere that's here.
Yeah.
Because that's important to us. And then also the performing arts school out there at Wade Hampton.
Yes.
We actually started a textile class out there.
Great.
For and teaching automotive textiles, but also textiles in general, and so we got that started. And then we're big supporters of the hardball every
great.
year. So that's my promotion.
Well, that's
John.
wonderful. That's wonderful. We
Absolutely.
appreciate all you do for those nonprofits, and also for what you've done to make Sage such a great part of the community. And I'm real proud of you, and thanks for sharing with that.
Well, thank you, and thanks for. I wish I'd have had this when I was starting out, so I had
me
the
too.
opportunity.
Me too.
A lot of us learn to the school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
But this is terrific.
Good. Well, thank you.
It's great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Yes, sir.
Always good
All
to
right.
see you.
Good to see you.
Enjoy our friendship. Thank you.
Did y'all get that?